Audio. Yes, it's working. Wonderful. Tucker, liberals horrified. NYC mayor candidate wants to carry a gun.
Coming to Tucker Carlson tonight, people haven't been
3.8
traveling much.
million
They've been stuck
views
at home. But if
from
you
May
had a
7,
chance to visit
2021.
New York City recently, if you have, you know the truth. It's awful. Awful in a very recognizable way. New York today looks a lot like New York in the 1970s, but without Studio 54. The city has once again become dirty, chaotic, and dangerous. The parks and train stations look like refugee camps for mentally ill drug users. Just as in the 1970s, a lot of people who live in New York are fleeing. And in fact, maybe you're one of them. Maybe you're watching this show right now, maskless, from your patio in Fort Lauderdale or Naples, glass of wine in hand, and thinking to yourself, why should I care about what happens in New York? I voted with my feet. I got out of that place. Let it rot. And honestly, that's a fair point. But consider another perspective. New York is the biggest city in the United States. More than 8 million people live there, including Americans. What happens in New
Including Americans.
York affects all of us. In the end, we're going to have to pay for the damage anyway, so we might as well root for the best outcome there. Tonight, believe it or not, something good might be happening in New York City. In fact, something good is happening there. Bill de Blasio is heading for retirement. We know that for sure. The single worst mayor in the history of representative government has reached the end of his second disastrous term. The long municipal nightmare is over. De Blasio's leaving. So the question is, who replaces him?
Well, if he's got elected for a second term, it means that maybe not everyone thought he was the worst mayor ever. And remember Rudy Giuliani, a complete nutcase? You think he is better, obviously.
Until recently, we assumed that would be Andrew Yang, the guy who just the other day was running for president. We talked to him as he ran, and we found that unlike a lot of 2020 Democrats, Beto O'Rourke, looking at you, Andrew Yang is not stupid. In fact, he's legitimately smart.
Wipe it over, look at you. But yeah, I like, basic incomes. Obviously, I like Yang. I like Yang for that. Yeah, I'd say he's my favorite candidate just for that. Even though in other ways, I guess he's a bit too he's not enough focused on inequalities overall, like inequities overall. But still, like basic income, like that's a pretty good thing. I mean, it's better. I prefer that to like the sort of more lefty stuff, but without basic income that other candidates are have offered. So I definitely think Yang would have been the way to go for president, and also definitely for New York.
At times, he's been insightful and willing to talk about interesting ideas in public. Unfortunately, in the end, the weight.
I'm glad to hear that Tucker is being so charitable towards Yang, and that he's a so like he's not criticizing him all that much. I'm liking that.
Of Andrew Yang's life credentials, Exeter, Brown, Columbia Law School, pulled him back to the poisonous culture that produced him in the first place, and he embraced, probably inevitably, the dumbest kind of identity politics. So at this point, the only real difference between Andrew Yang and the next unhappy lady browsing the aisles at Whole Foods in a mask is that Andrew Yang is slightly more articulate. And that's sad. Another one bites the dust. But still...
Okay, well, I guess I take that back. But why? What has Andrew Yang done? What has he said? I wanna hear this. I wanna know what identity politics stuff did he do?
We assumed that Andrew Yang would win the Democratic primary in New York because it's the Democratic primary in New York, but we were wrong. He may not win. It turns out New York is changing. All that urban decay appears to have awakened voters to actual issues. According to a new poll, Andrew Yang is losing as of today to a guy called Eric Adams. He's the Brooklyn borough president, controversial for many years. In a lot of ways, Eric Adams is a conventional big city Democrat. He's into identity politics too. The difference is that Eric Adams is eccentric enough to say what he really thinks once in a while. For example, in a speech last year, Adams launched into an attack on the smug, fussy liberals who have flooded into New York over the past 3 decades. He addressed an audience of people who have to live with them, and you can sympathize. Quote, "You were here before Starbucks. You were here before others came and decided they wanted to be part of this city. Folks are not only hijacking your apartments and displacing your living arrangements, they displace your conversations and say that things that are important to you are no longer important." So what exactly was Eric Adams talking about?
Yeah, he's talking about gentrification, but please, again, talker, stop pretending that you are on the side of the average person and not the billionaire elite.
What are the important things that smug, fussy liberals don't want you to talk about? Well, crime and disorder mostly, and those matter. Once you're afraid of getting shot to death while walking to the store, once you can't use the park across the street because vagrants are living there, nothing else really matters. No matter what color you are, crime and disorder define your life. And whatever else he is, Eric Adams is bright enough to understand that. He spent 20 years as a cop in New York. Here's his announcement for mayor.
We're facing a crisis unlike anything we've ever seen before. Businesses are closing, crime is rising, homelessness is soaring, and our families are struggling. We can't have an education system that fails to put our children on a pathway of success and leaves them at a dead end of crime and hopelessness.
So businesses are closing, crime is rising, homelessness is soaring. Adams said that out loud, and by itself, that is a victory in the context of New York politics, a victory of
Really?
reality over delusion.
I don't know, because it seems that New York, I mean, that kind of stuff was pretty low. So maybe if, like, New York had got its crime rates down, and yeah, I mean, obviously it was thanks to sort of more tough on crime right wing stances, but nonetheless, it was down. So it's maybe normal that people weren't talking about it so much.
For years, there has been a rigid code among those smug, fussy liberals in New York City that you're not allowed to notice as things fall apart. And to the extent that you do notice, you're supposed to think it's charming or diverse or somehow related to equity. More drug ODs in Penn Station. How vibrant. But Eric Adams doesn't think that way at all. He thinks all of that.
I don't think most people think that way, but I'll agree. I'll concede that lots of these sort of lefty people are sort of tend to ignore that kind of a thing. So yeah.
That is awful. And here's his solution. Don't put up with that crap. Bring back order, crack down, make New York City safe again. Everything depends on it. And he's right. Watch.
It doesn't make any consolation if a police officer shoots someone illegally or if a gangbanger in blue jeans. No matter what community I am in, people want their families to be safe. And that resonates with everyday New Yorkers. And I know my message will resonate with them. If we're not safe in this city, companies are not coming to New York. Our multi-billion-dollar tourism industry is not going to return if tourists are shot at Grand Central Station. And so the first order of business is to get violence under control.
Well, yeah.
Yep, and that we're agreed. But again, like the Republicans are doing everything they can to maximize violence, like the causes of violence. They want to maximize the causes of violence and then at the same time address it through a sort of police force which itself is rather violent. Instead of addressing the causes of violence, uh, again, like I've said, which is things like poverty, which can be addressed with basic income, which Yang is what Yang wants, and like I said, like criminalization of drug use. I think those are the two biggest issues here. So I'm repeating the same stuff all over and over again. I'm going to repeat it because it's always just the same basic issues.
The first order of business is to get violence under control. You would think that would be the top priority of every New York City politician. Why have a mayor otherwise? But it's not their top priority. It's not even close. The current mayor spends half his life opining on global warming, even as he pollutes the atmosphere with his weed smoke. Eric Adams is actually...
Oh boy, yeah, that's 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 silly. Like the amount of pollution that would cause is like so minimal that it's meaningless.
serious about fighting crime. How serious? He said if he becomes mayor, he plans to carry his own gun. Can you imagine Bill de Blasio doing that? He would shoot himself by accident.
So as mayor, would you carry a firearm on you even with a security detail?
Yes, I will, number one. And number two, I won't have a security detail. If the city is safe, the mayor shouldn't have a security detail with him. He should be walking the street by himself. Number three, the hypocrisy of those who are citywide officials who said that you shouldn't have guns in church. Those guys that walk in with them, they got guns.
So you can tell how true something is by how the usual hysterics respond to it. In this case, they were totally horrified. Display bravery? Defend yourself? Show evidence of a higher than average testosterone level? How could you? Eric Adams later suggested he might have been joking, but as you just saw, he wasn't joking. He obviously meant that. And normal voters appreciated it. Why wouldn't they? Meanwhile, once promising Andrew Yang has descended deeper into the self-discrediting absurdity of modern identity
So that's what
politics,
he's done.
something that it turns out most voters actually don't like. Who knew? At a forum the other day, Yang was asked about violence against Asian Americans. Now, every single human being in New York City understands where that violence comes from, but of course Yang did not say that. His solution? Give more taxpayer money to racial affinity groups aligned with the Democratic Party. That'll make Asian grandmothers safe.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what he means by those groups. I haven't seen this site. I don't know what he means by those groups.
Except it won't make Asian grandmothers or anyone else safe, we know, because we tried it. It doesn't work. All that does work is enforcing the law. And most people know that.
Yeah, but I think it doesn't have to be an either or. Like, maybe, like, obviously you got to enforce the law. Obviously you need a strong police force. But maybe, like, you could add something like that on top of it. I mean, obviously, if Yang is asking to defund the police, that's probably a bad idea.
Yet enforcing the law is the one thing that Andrew Yang opposes. Yang has called for taking more money from the NYPD budget and giving it to mental health services, whatever that means. Then in a radio interview, Yang suggested that...
Well, come on, whatever that means. I mean, that makes sense, because lots of these people have mental health issues. Lots of people that get shot by the police for no good reason have mental health issues. In fact, like maybe even most of them. And it would make sense, in fact, because I mean those people weren't actually a threat, and it would make sense to address their mental health issues instead of just additional policing. Yeah, I can see how that would make sense, but you still need a strong police force, of course.
Funding the police by $1 billion, which they've done, might not be enough.
You know, they did shift $1 billion from the NYPD, you know, to other things. But would you do more than that? Would you do more than $1 billion?
I think that's what we need to be looking at. The reality is, if you're going to look at the city budget, the NYPD is the most likely place to look, because we're just spending a lot of money on the NYPD.
The sad thing is, people like Andrew Yang, Exeter Brown, Columbia, are such craven butt kissers, they don't understand the advantage in telling the truth. If he'd said to the radio host, "Are you joking? Defund the police? That's insane." The radio host probably would have agreed with him, but that's not what Yang did. He tried to suck up and he humiliated himself, and then he went on from there. Yang has demanded that the police learn martial arts, purple belt at minimum, so they won't have to use their weapons, just well-placed karate chops. Yang has also called for changing the uniforms and titles in police departments across the country. Quote, "I might rename them Guardians," he wrote, "and adopt a different color scheme." Oh, a different color scheme. You got to wonder, is there still a constituency for ideas this stupid? And the answer is, of course. Grad school liberals love this stuff. Fawning over criminals makes them feel good about themselves. And then when things disintegrate, as of course they will, the grad school liberals just leave. They literally head for the hills, Telluride, Aspen, Beaver Creek, anywhere without the, quote, crime problem. And a lot of them are doing that now. The liberals who still remain in New York don't have much use for Eric Adams, weirdly. He's the one black candidate they don't like. You get the feeling he doesn't like them back. He definitely doesn't believe them when they talk. Here's Eric Adams on the radio in July sympathizing with, of all people, Donald Trump.
There's ads, but I really want to see this. I've got to see this. I want to see this.
Mercer believes in doing the right thing to give you the best retirement outcome. Learn more about how Mercer can help you get ahead.
I wish I was getting paid. Oh no, I've got all these ads. Oh man. Well, if I'm showing the ads, there's really no reason I can get copy strike.
We're in a period of sexy headline. Truth be damned, man. Nobody cares about truth anymore. Man, this is a Instagram, Twitter universe where people say, listen, we're sexy, we're sells, that's what it is. The same thing they accused Donald Trump of, man, that far left, please, man. We know moderate thinking, communication, real facts don't even matter in this universe we're in right now.
it be that things have fallen apart to such an extent in New York that they've gotten so crazy that someone like Eric Adams, who you would have laughed off the stage 18 months ago, as crazy himself, actually is the sanest guy running and maybe the one person who can save the city from itself? We don't know. But it wouldn't be the weirdest thing that's happened this year.
Hey, Sean Hannity here.
Well,
Hey,
I'm glad that they're at least not just trashing on him for being still a Democrat. So that is good.